At my retirement party, my wife and kids gave me a plastic medal that said, "Congrats on being easily replaceable." They laughed. I smiled, thanked them, and blew out the candles. That night, I made a plan. 2 months later, my wife showed up at a motel screaming, "He took everything and left us with nothing." The day of my retirement party felt like it had been plucked straight from a cheesy Hallmark movie. Sun shining, banners waving, friends and family milling about the community center we rented for the occasion. After 30 years working as a plant engineer, mostly unnoticed, mostly uncelebrated, I wasn't expecting much. Just a few handshakes, a sheet cake, maybe a gold watch if someone got ambitious. Instead, my wife Carla and our 2 kids, Matt and Lindsay, decided to spice it up. I should have known something was off when Carla insisted I wear the loud Hawaiian shirt she bought me as a funny retirement look. Bright yellow, palm trees, giant flamingos. I look like a rejected cruise ship tour guide, but I went along with it. Because that's who I was, the guy who went along. The hall was decked out, streamers, tables of catered food, a giant cake shaped like a wrench. Everyone I knew, or at least everyone who bothered, was there. Even old Pete from the 3rd shift showed up, still grumbling about his bad back. Near the end of the party, Carla tapped her wine glass with a spoon. "Everyone, gather round. Time for Dad's special surprise." My kids practically skipped over to me. Matt, now in his late 20s and already thinking he ran the world, handed me a wrapped box with a smirk. Lindsay, texting furiously on her phone, only half watched. I opened it carefully, expecting maybe a photo album or something sentimental. Inside was a cheap, flimsy plastic medal on a tangled blue ribbon. It read in bright, cartoony letters, "Congrats on being easily replaceable." The room exploded with laughter. My brother-in-law Dave actually wheezed, clutching his stomach like he couldn't breathe from laughing so hard. Some of my co-workers exchanged glances, half amused, half awkward. I just stood there, medal hanging from one hand, feeling like a man who'd been slapped and told it was a hug. I forced a smile. "Wow," I said. "You shouldn't have." Matt doubled over laughing. Carla kissed my cheek. "It's just a joke, honey. Lighten up." I nodded. Blew out the candles on the cake. Thanked everyone who came. Hugged my wife, shook hands, posed for a few photos with the stupid medal still hanging from my neck. Smiling for everyone. Inside, something cracked. Not loudly. Just a small, almost gentle fracture. The kind that doesn't hurt until you realize it's the beginning of something breaking wide open. Later that night, when the house was quiet and everyone was too drunk or too full of cake to care about anything else, I lay awake in the darkness. Carla snored lightly beside me, clutching my arm like nothing had changed. But something had. Oh, something had. I stared at the ceiling fan, watching the blades spin lazily, and began to plan. Not in anger. Not in bitterness. In clarity. A slow, meticulous revenge, served cold, calculated, and absolutely irreversible. They thought this was funny. They had no idea what real comedy looked like. The next morning, nothing seemed different on the surface. Carla bustled around the kitchen making pancakes, humming off-key. Matt was already arguing over speakerphone with someone from his job. Lindsay, still in her pajamas, flopped onto the couch scrolling TikTok, giggling every few minutes. I sipped my coffee slowly, watching them. Memorizing them. Their faces, their careless smiles, the casual way they moved through the house like little royalty. Like the house, the life, the money, it all just existed for their benefit. No gratitude. No respect. Not even the basic kindness you'd offer a stranger who held a door for you. They had laughed at me last night. Mocked me. Turned the culmination of 30 years of hard work into a party trick. And I had clapped along. But while they laughed, I had learned something valuable. They thought I was harmless. Invisible. Powerless. Perfect. The first thing I did was simple, play the part. Smiled when Carla suggested a small kitchen remodel to celebrate my retirement. Nodded when Matt asked for help with a small loan so he could upgrade his truck. Gave Lindsay my blessing when she floated the idea of studying abroad, just for a year, maybe longer if I like it. I agreed to everything. Paid for everything. Acted like the same old dependable dad and husband who had always put them first. Meanwhile, I began laying the groundwork. First, I set up a private financial account, separate, hidden, ironclad. I used the same bank I'd been with for decades, but under a different branch and a new personal advisor who owed me a favor. I transferred half of my retirement fund into it. Then I started cashing out small investments, bonds, shares, the CD account that Carla thought was locked in until next year. Little by little. Carefully. Second, I met with my old friend and lawyer, Walter. Retired Navy guy. No nonsense. He didn't even flinch when I explained my plan. Finally grew a pair, huh? He said with a wry grin. You could say that, I replied. Walter helped me set up a living trust one Carla and the kids didn't know about and work with me to create an airtight prenuptial fallback I should have demanded 30 years ago. Better late than never. Third, I inventoried everything of real value in the house. The antiques, the heirlooms, the certificates, the safe deposit box keys. Quietly moved them, over the course of weeks, to a secure storage unit in a neighboring town. Even rented the unit under a different name. At dinner, I smiled and passed the mashed potatoes while Carla floated the idea of installing a jacuzzi. Matt joked about needing a new ATV. Lindsay whined about needing money for a new laptop because the one I bought her 6 months ago was already slow. I chuckled. Of course, sweetheart. They laughed, thinking I was soft. Easy. Trapped. I was none of those things anymore. I slept like a baby that night for the first time in years. And every morning, while Carla filled her Pinterest boards with remodeling ideas and the kids daydreamed about how to spend my retirement money, I took a little more away. No drama. No shouting. No signs. Just silent subtraction. Inch by inch. They never even noticed the ship was sinking. Not until the water reached their knees. And by the time it did, I planned to be long, long gone. The funny thing about people who take you for granted is that they never expect you to change. It was almost effortless to keep up the charade. Carla filled up our calendar with appointments for new flooring, countertop samples, a swimming pool estimate that would cost almost as much as a second mortgage. Matt came by every weekend to hang out, which really meant hinting around for cash. Lindsay dropped phrases like, "When you pay for my Europe trip," like it was already written into the laws of nature. And I smiled. Nodded. Pretended to consider everything. But inside, I was cold. Precise. Unforgiving. Every night after they went to bed, I sat in the den, still wearing my Hawaiian retirement shirt some nights, like a private joke, and checked the progress. Accounts safely moved. Deeds transferred to the trust. Insurances updated. Will rewritten. Even the house, the same one I had spent 30 years paying off, was no longer jointly owned. I'd had it quietly refinanced under my name only. Carla signed some paperwork for the kitchen loan without even reading it. I almost felt bad when she joked afterward, "Hope I didn't just sign my life away." I just smiled. "You're fine, sweetheart." The contractors she'd hired to start early renovation work? They didn't know that I personally called each one and canceled behind her back, issuing polite but firm hold notices through Walter's office. I paid some of them for their trouble to make sure there were no hard feelings or lawsuits later. Meanwhile, I started shedding unnecessary weights from my life. Sold the second car she hated but tolerated for my occasional fishing trips. Cleared out half the garage. Reduced the number of bills tied to the house. At one point, Carla noticed a few things missing. "Where's the old safe?" she asked one afternoon, confused, standing in the basement. "Sold it to make space," I said casually. She shrugged. "Good." It was ugly. I could hardly believe how easy it all was. How little they noticed when I quietly erased myself from the responsibilities they piled onto me. They didn't notice when my pension checks stopped depositing into our joint account. Didn't ask why the mailbox had fewer credit card offers. Didn't see when I removed my name from their emergency contacts and stopped co-signing anything at all. I was careful. Deliberate. A silent ghost in my own house. The one moment that almost cracked the mask was when Lindsay made a toast one night at dinner. "To Dad," she said, raising her wine glass with a smirk. "Our golden goose. Hope you stay healthy for another 50 years. The table roared with laughter. I smiled back at her, raising my glass. "To the future," I said. Inside, I felt the ice in my chest harden. Because the future she imagined? It was about to end. It happened faster than I even expected. 2 months after the party, Carla called a family meeting one Saturday morning, right after her Pilates class. She wore her bright pink workout gear, hair up in a messy bun, acting like the CEO of a company she didn't even own. Matt and Lindsay were already sitting at the kitchen table, both looking way too smug for kids who'd never paid a bill in their lives. I sat down, sipping my coffee, careful to keep my face blank. "So," Carla said, clapping her hands together. "We've been talking, and we have some ideas." "Big ideas," Matt added, like he was pitching me a startup investment. Lindsay leaned forward, practically vibrating with excitement. "We're thinking vacations, renovations, investments. You know, use some of your retirement wisely." Carla smiled sweetly. "No offense, honey, but you're not getting any younger. You worked your whole life. It's time to live a little." Her hand casually brushed over a stack of glossy travel brochures on the table: Italy, the Maldives, luxury cruises. We figured, she continued, you wouldn't mind helping us kick off some of these plans. After all, her voice dipped into that fake soft tone she used when she wanted something. You always said you wanted the kids to have a better life, right? Matt pushed forward a sheet of paper, a rough budget breakdown. Tens of thousands in startup help for his business idea. A new MacBook and tuition fees for Lindsay's essential study abroad experience. Down payments for the renovations, new kitchen, expanded patio, a hot tub. And a reservation deposit for a family cruise, non-refundable, of course. The total? Over $200,000. I stared at the paper for a long moment, the numbers swimming in front of me. Not because I was shocked. No, because I realized something deeper. They really, truly thought I existed for their convenience. They weren't embarrassed. They weren't even trying to be subtle. They thought they were entitled to everything I'd worked for. Carla leaned over and patted my hand. I know it sounds like a lot, she said, her voice sticky sweet, but don't worry. We can set up automatic transfers. Less stress for you. After all, Lindsay chimed in, you're retired now. What else are you gonna do with it? The room buzzed with their laughter, the sounds of forks clinking against plates, casual, easy, sure of themselves. I smiled back. A wide, easy, perfect smile. You're absolutely right, I said warmly. It's time to live a little. Carla let out a relieved breath. Matt grinned like he had just won the lottery. Lindsay immediately went back to her phone, no doubt shopping for first-class plane tickets. I finished my coffee, wiped my mouth with a napkin, and said, let's enjoy it while we can. And inside, I savored the moment. Because they didn't realize something crucial. Tomorrow morning, everything they thought they owned, every dream they were already spending in their heads, was going to vanish. The money. The house. The easy life they took for granted. It was all about to burn down. And when it did, I wouldn't be there to catch them. The morning after the family meeting, I woke early, just as the sun was pushing thin golden lines through the blinds. I took one last quiet walk through the house. The kitchen still smelled faintly of last night's coffee. The TV room was littered with empty soda cans and pizza boxes Matt had left. Lindsay's laptop hummed softly from her spot on the couch, where she'd fallen asleep mid-Netflix binge. Carla was still upstairs, snoring softly in our bed. It all looked so peaceful. So normal. I smiled to myself, grabbed my duffel bag packed neatly days ago, and slipped out the back door. No slamming. No dramatic note left on the counter. Just silence. Before they even opened their eyes, the web I'd been weaving for months tightened into place. By 9 a.m., Carla's credit card was declined at her favorite boutique. She thought it was a mistake. By 9:15, Matt tried to Venmo himself a few $100 from my old joint account. Transaction failed. By 9:30, Lindsay called me in a panic because her tuition payment bounced. I watched it unfold from a sunny patio 2 towns over, sipping fresh coffee, my duffel resting beside me, my new phone buzzing with notifications I ignored. Then came the frantic calls. First from Carla. Then from Matt. Then Lindsay, alternating between screaming and sobbing into my voicemail. By noon, they realized the house mortgage was no longer in Carla's name or anyone's they could control. The bank account they depended on? Cleared. Utilities? Transferred. Cars? Retitled. Insurance? Cancelled on all their luxury crap except the basics I'd legally have to maintain until my new address was finalized. Walter had filed all the final paperwork exactly as planned. They had nothing. I imagined the scene unfolding, Carla pacing, yelling into her phone, Matt swearing up and down, blaming everyone but himself, Lindsay crying, maybe trying to call her spoiled college friends for advice. They had never planned. Never prepared. Never saved. They had simply assumed that Dad would always be there. Dad the provider. Dad the fool. Dad the joke with the funny retirement medal. Now they sat in the middle of the wreckage they'd built around their entitlement, realizing too late that the foundation was gone. And it got better. Because I didn't just disappear financially. I disappeared physically. By the time they thought to drive to my favorite fishing spot or call my usual haunts, I was 2 states away, checking into a quiet little beachside cottage I'd already paid a full year in advance for, under a shell company Walter helped me set up. No forwarding address. No emergency contact. Just a new life. Just me. Later that night, after a long walk on the beach, I finally checked my new voicemail. Carla's voice, broken, barely coherent. Please, come back. We don't know what to do, we need you. Matt, furious. You selfish old bastard. How could you do this to us? Lindsay, pitiful, half crying, half snarling. Dad, just call me. We can fix this. You can't just leave. I listened to every message once, calmly, like someone listening to the weather report for a city they no longer lived in. Then I deleted them all. I turned off my phone. Stepped onto the cottage's little wooden deck. Breathed in the salty air. And for the first time in decades, I felt weightless. They had laughed at me. Mocked me. But now? Now they finally understood who they were laughing at. The first few days after the fallout were almost comical. They went through the classic stages: anger, confusion, denial, bargaining. First came the angry texts. Matt led the charge, firing off message after message demanding to know where I was, how I could abandon my family after everything we'd done together. Lindsay wasn't far behind, alternating between guilt trips and veiled threats about getting a lawyer. Carla's messages were different. At first, they were stiffly polite. "Honey, can we please talk about this like adults? We can work something out. You're just upset." Then, when there was no answer, the real Carla started bleeding through. "You owe us. After everything we sacrificed for you. You're a selfish, bitter old man." Each message was a little more frantic than the last. Each one proved what I'd finally accepted about them: they never loved me. They loved what I provided. And now that the faucet was dry, they had no idea how to survive. I spent my mornings on the beach, walking barefoot in the cool sand, watching the seagulls skim the waves. I drank coffee from a chipped blue mug, read novels I never had time for, and listened to jazz on an old radio. Sometimes I rented a little fishing boat just to drift out into the blue and sit in complete silence. It was bliss. Meanwhile, the voicemails piled up. And when they realized calls weren't working, the physical letters started. The first was from Carla. Sloppy handwriting, tear stains smudging the ink. "I miss you. I'm sorry if we hurt your feelings. We were just trying to have fun. Please come home." Then Matt. "You made your point. Enough's enough. Be a man and face your responsibilities." And Lindsay, pitifully. "Dad, I'm scared. We're losing the house. Mom cries all the time. Matt's talking about suing you. Please, just talk to us." I almost felt a flicker of pity. Almost. But then I remembered sitting at my own retirement party, clutching the cheap plastic medal, listening to the people I loved most in the world laugh at me like I was a clown they'd hired for their own amusement. I remembered the heat rising in my ears, the fake smile stretching across my face, the polite claps as they shoved the joke deeper into my ribs. And any pity I might have felt evaporated like mist under the morning sun. Around the third week, Carla found the cottage's mailing address. I had used it for a few quiet business dealings and, somehow, she traced it. One afternoon, I found her car idling outside the small wooden gate, looking entirely out of place against the weathered charm of the beach cottages. She stood there, thin and frail in her designer clothes, clutching a heavy purse like it might shield her. When I opened the gate, she rushed forward, mascara streaking down her face. "Please," she sobbed, grabbing my sleeve. "We need you. I need you. We can't do this without you." Her hands were shaking. She looked smaller than I remembered. Weaker. The confident woman who once mocked me in front of dozens of people was gone. I gently peeled her hand off my arm. "I know," I said simply. And then, without another word, I closed the gate. She stood there for a long time, knocking, crying, pleading. Eventually, she left. I didn't watch her go. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, settled into the old rocking chair on the porch, and listened to the sound of the ocean swallowing her footsteps. For once, the world made sense. They had bet everything on the assumption that I would always be there. And they lost. After Carla's visit, things finally grew quiet. The calls slowed. The texts trickled into nothing. Even the letters stopped arriving. It was like they had finally accepted the truth. I was gone. Not in anger. Not in hatred. In indifference. The one thing they never prepared for. The silence wasn't lonely, it was freedom. In the months that followed, I settled into a life that was simple, honest, and blissfully mine. I spent my mornings fishing off the weathered pier, chatting with old-timers who didn't know or care who I had been before. Afternoons were for fixing up the cottage, sanding, painting, rewiring the old light fixtures with my own hands. Evenings were a mix of long walks on the beach, soft vinyl records spinning in the background, and the kind of sleep that comes from living a life without pretense. One morning, while sipping my usual black coffee on the deck, an envelope arrived tucked under the door. No postage. No return address. Inside was a thin, desperate letter from Matt. "Mom's moving in with Lindsay temporarily. I had to sell my truck. Bank's coming for the house next month. You've made your point. You ruined everything. Hope you're happy." I read it once. Then again, slowly, savoring it like a fine wine. Because it wasn't anger that tasted so sweet, it was the knowledge that they finally understood. I was not their wallet. I was not their punching bag. I was not their backup plan. I was a man who could walk away and never look back. The ultimate punchline was this. They thought I needed them. They thought the cheap jokes, the disrespect, the dismissal were things I would always swallow, because what else would I have? They didn't realize until too late. I had myself. And that was enough.